Let me share something intriguing about silence in today's digital world. We now live in an era where nearly everything is broadcasted: birthdays, coffee moments, sunsets, laughter, tears, and even pain, all wrapped in filters. Yet, some people remain almost completely unseen. They scroll quietly, observe deeply, but rarely share anything. You might even know someone like that, or perhaps you are that person. And that brings up a question many often wonder. Why? Why would someone choose to stay unseen when everyone else seems to crave attention? It's easy to assume that people who don't post are just shy or introverted. But that's only part of the truth. Beneath the surface lies a deeper psychology, one that reveals much about human behavior, self-awareness, and a subtle resistance against a culture obsessed with visibility. For some, silence isn't emptiness, it's control. It's the ability to decide what the world doesn't get to know. Whether we realize it or not, social media has quietly reshaped how we define identity. It celebrates noise, rewards visibility, and glorifies constant sharing. Yet, those who stay behind the curtain often see the clearest picture. They observe without interrupting, think before reacting, and analyze before judging. Psychological studies show that people who post less tend to have stronger traits of self-restraint, introspection, and emotional independence. They're less influenced by comparisons and outside approval. They don't seek to prove who they are. They seek to understand it. And in a world overflowing with digital performances, that's rare. Let's be honest. Most of what we share online isn't just communication. It's self-presentation. Every caption, every photo, every status says, "This is who I am. Do you approve?" But once you stop posting, something changes. You detach your value from likes and reactions. You stop thinking in captions. You start living for yourself again, not for an audience. That's the quiet psychology behind those who choose not to post. They crave authenticity in a space that feels manufactured. They don't dislike social media. They just don't find themselves in it anymore. It's not about rejecting technology or people. It's about refusing to shrink your life into highlight reels. Because once you realize how easily perception can be shaped, you begin to cherish what can't be displayed: silence, honesty, imperfection, and depth. For many, the decision to stop sharing comes after emotional fatigue. Maybe they once posted everything, until it stopped feeling genuine. They noticed that each time they shared something beautiful, they felt pressure to keep topping it. Life turned into a performance instead of an experience. So they stepped back quietly. No announcement, just a gradual fade from the feed. But that doesn't mean they've stopped caring. In fact, they might care even more about meaning, presence, and protecting what feels sacred. In psychology, there is a concept called psychological ownership, the sense that something truly belongs to you, a thought, a moment, a memory. The instant you post it, that ownership weakens a little. The moment becomes public property, open to judgment or misinterpretation. So those who don't post are often preserving that ownership, keeping their moments pure, private, and untouched. And maybe that's not loneliness, it's freedom. Because think about it. When was the last time you did something meaningful without feeling the need to share it? When was the last time you laughed, cried, or achieved something without instantly thinking about posting it online? That urge to share isn't natural, it's learned. It's the result of years of likes and dopamine loops teaching us that validation equals worth. So when someone steps away from that cycle, it can feel rebellious. But it's also healing. They rediscover the joy of doing things for themselves again. Cooking without photographing it, traveling without tagging it, feeling without explaining it. In that quiet space, a deeper self-awareness reawakens, one that doesn't need an audience. Still, not everyone who stays silent online does so out of peace. Some are guided by fear of judgment, rejection, or being misunderstood. Social media has amplified what psychologists call self-presentational pressure, the constant awareness of being watched even when you're not. For many, that's mentally draining. They fear being misread, or worse, ignored. So they step back, not because they reject connection, but because the cost of being visible feels too high. They want to be seen, but truly seen, not through filters or curated perfection, And often the quietest people online have the most vivid inner worlds. They're not absent, they're overflowing, with thought, emotion, and insight. They simply choose stillness over spectacle. And in that stillness lies a quiet kind of wisdom, one that speaks softly but says everything. In a world constantly shouting, "Look at me," choosing to stay unseen becomes its own quiet act of self-definition. It's a way of saying, "I exist beyond what you can see." These individuals scroll through others' lives, nodding, smiling, sometimes feeling a pang of emotion, but they rarely project their own, because they understand something most people overlook. Not every experience is meant to be displayed. Life's deepest moments, growth, loss, transformation, often unfold in silence, away from attention or validation. And when someone has gone through enough of those private evolutions, they start realizing that being unseen isn't the same as being unimportant. It's actually where identity develops, not where it's performed. Here lies the paradox. Social media was created to connect us, yet it often leaves people feeling lonelier than ever. When you stop posting, you stop chasing digital closeness and begin rebuilding genuine connection. You notice who reaches out without needing updates, who remembers you without reminders. That kind of bond, unfiltered, unadvertised, feels deeper, warmer, and more authentic. Those who don't post often live within that space. They form relationships that don't need public validation. They find peace in unshared moments and allow life to flow naturally, without turning it into content. It's also about a sense of identity, knowing who you are even when no one is watching. When you're comfortable being alone, you don't need an audience to affirm your value. That's not arrogance, that's peace. Interestingly, the quiet ones often have the most compelling stories, but they share them across a table, not across a screen. To them, real connection isn't found in likes or comments. It's found in shared silence, eye contact, and laughter that doesn't need witnesses. These are people who carry entire worlds inside them, who think deeply, observe constantly, and understand quietly. They don't need applause to justify their existence. They simply live it. And maybe, in a world desperate for attention, their silence isn't a weakness but a reflection. A reminder that not everything meaningful must be shared, and that sometimes the most human thing you can do is to keep something entirely your own. What's fascinating is how someone's perception changes the longer they stay away from social media. Colors appear more vivid, time slows down, and conversations feel richer. Stepping away from the noise makes the world feel real again. Because when you stop performing, you start living. There's a simple beauty in moving through life without needing evidence of every moment. You're no longer thinking about angles, filters, or captions. You're just there, fully present. That's something social media rarely allows anymore. But the psychology behind this runs deeper than just personal preference. It's tied to how our brains handle validation. Every time we post something and receive attention, likes, comments, reactions, our brain releases dopamine, the same chemical connected to reward and addiction. Over time, we start craving that feedback loop, focusing more on shareable experiences than real ones. Now imagine someone who breaks that pattern, who chooses to disconnect from that dopamine cycle. That's not a lack of interest. It's a sign of discipline. It takes awareness and control to resist something engineered to keep you engaged. People who refrain from posting often possess what psychologists call a strong internal locus of control, the belief that their worth and happiness come from within, not from outside approval. They don't need a digital echo saying, "You're enough," to believe it. And research supports this. Studies show that people who take extended breaks from posting or consuming social media content often experience noticeable improvements in emotional balance and overall life satisfaction. Because when your sense of identity is no longer constantly reflected back at you, it becomes stronger, it becomes genuine. You stop editing your life into something easily consumed. Instead, you live it fully, in all its messy, beautiful, and unfiltered reality. Maybe that's the quiet act of rebellion today, to remain whole in a world that celebrates fragments. But silence online doesn't always mean peace. Sometimes it hides exhaustion. For many, social media started as a space for connection but turned into a source of fatigue. There's an emotional weariness that comes from constantly seeing others' highlight reels while you were still assembling your own behind-the-scenes moments. You compare yourself even when you try not to. You doubt your worth even when you know better. Eventually, some choose to step away, not out of anger, but to protect themselves. They realize they don't owe the world a performance or an explanation for their silence. They don't need to prove they're happy for it to be true. That's one of this generation's quiet truths. We've mistaken visibility for value. We think being noticed is the same as mattering. Yet real meaning doesn't need witnesses. The most defining moments of your life often happen unseen. No cameras, no captions, no audience, just you. And perhaps those who don't post understand this best. They know privacy isn't loneliness. It's intimacy with yourself. When you stop sharing every thought, you begin to hear your own again. You reconnect with the parts of yourself lost in the noise, your quiet desires, your unspoken fears, your inner direction. That, in itself, is something deeply spiritual today. It's not withdrawal. It's returning home. Of course, it's not always easy. There are moments of doubt, wondering if your silence makes you invisible or left behind while others perform progress. But with time, you notice something beautiful. Your worth doesn't fade when no one's watching. It remains steady and calm, like the quiet after a storm. Maybe that's what true confidence looks like. Not loud declarations online, but quiet assurance offline. People say, if you didn't post it, did it really happen? But the truth is, the things that shape you most rarely make it to the feed. Your growth, heartbreaks, private victories, and silent kindnesses. They live in memory, not media, and that's enough. Psychologists say authentic self-expression means alignment between who you are inside and what you show the world. But in the age of filters, that alignment gets blurred. You start living as a version of yourself designed for approval. So when someone chooses not to post, it may be their way of staying true, to protect that fragile honesty between their inner and outer world. They don't need validation to know their feelings are real. They don't need to capture every sunset to remember how it felt. They live fully and quietly. Here lies a paradox. Those who live quietly often feel life more deeply. They're not distracted by the performance of it. They notice details others overlook. The change of light, the pause before words, the echo of distant laughter. They are present, and presence is the rarest currency in a world built on attention. Still, such presence can make them misunderstood, labeled as distant or cold. But their silence isn't emptiness. It's depth. It's the calm that comes from no longer needing to explain yourself. There's quiet confidence in not needing to be known by everyone, only understood by a few. Those who don't post understand this best. They know not every truth is meant for an audience. Some parts of you deserve to remain untouched by algorithms and opinions. Because once something becomes public, it's no longer just yours. It becomes subject to interpretation, judgment, and trend, and some moments are too sacred for that. So the next time you see someone who never posts, don't assume they're hiding. Maybe they're simply living, finding peace in life's quiet corners, away from the blue glow of a screen. Maybe they've remembered what many of us forgot, that being unseen doesn't mean being alone, and being quiet doesn't mean being empty. Sometimes, the truest expression of self is silence. Because in the end, we're not meant to be performances. We're meant to be people. And those who don't post remind us of that in every quiet, unfiltered, and beautifully unseen moment.